Hey YouTube, so this is my video review of my Alden for Brooks Brothers Shell Cordovan wingtip. So Alden makes these. They actually make this both in shell cordovan and in calfskin. Both the pairs you're looking at are shell cordovan in Alden's number 8, or as Horween calls it, burgundy shell cordovan, and then also black shell cordovan. So these are unique. I don't really know of many other makers that create a balmoral wingtip, meaning that the eyelets are sewn into, or I'm sorry, the eye stays are actually part of the upper as opposed to sewn onto the upper. So that's balmoral. Wingtip, and what makes these unique are the exposed eyelets. Most shoes that are this level of formality actually have hidden eyelets, like this pair of Allen Edmonds that I have. So the exposed eyelets makes these pretty unique, and I like the look. In addition to that, Alden makes these on the Plaza last, which has a little bit of a soft square in the toe, and I don't know if the video is going to pick this up. Maybe overhead it will. It kind of squares off the toe of the shoe just a little bit, and I think makes for a pretty neat look on the shoe. So here's a different wingtip on the Aberdeen last that Alden also makes. So you can see that's rounded. These are more square. In addition to that, Alden puts the ram's horn toe medallion on this particular pair, and that's kind of unique also. I don't know of many other shoemakers that make that sort of medallion available. So the shoe itself, again, is made out of shell cordovan, has a full leather single oak sole. Single oak, we're talking about the thickness in the sole. Does have the dovetailed rubber and leather heel. And as you can see, it says made for Brooks Brothers. Actually, Alden is nowhere to be found on these shoes. They are, however, made by Alden. The other unique thing is the treatment of the heel. And you can sort of see, you have the single piece that wraps around, hidden heel, I think is what they call that. And I'll compare that with what Allen Edmonds does, which is more typical for a wingtip shoe like that. So these are brogues, meaning that there's a lot of punchings, adornments around the actual shoe itself, which make for a nice appearance, in my opinion. Originally, and if you look back kind of 50 years ago or so, the more punching that there was on a shoe, the less formal it was. And so you wouldn't wear a shoe like this with a suit, because a suit is more formal, a shoe like this is less formal, so it doesn't match. But really, starting at about the 1950s, and the citation, or the place where everybody talks about is IBM in the 1950s, when everyone wore long wingtips, which have similar broguing, with suits every day, it became sort of more commonplace to see a shoe like this worn with a suit. So as I mentioned, these are on a last that's actually slightly different, but is, for our intents and purposes, the same as the Plaza last. This particular pair, the burgundy pair, I actually just picked up. I've worn them once, and so you can sort of see the little insignia here. It's just a circle at this point, but it actually used to say shell cordovan. Let's see if this one's any better. Not really. It used to say shell cordovan until I wore it off. And then this pair is much older. You can sort of see I've worn these quite a few times for a number of years. What really is kind of neat about the shell cordovan leather is that it lasts so well. This particular pair of black shoes, I think I've had them for about 3 years, and I wore them really in bad weather, usually. That's when I end up wearing my black shell cordovan shoes, usually, because they're very easy to clean and upkeep. And you can see they look pretty good. You don't get the same kind of creasing that you see in calfskin shoes, where you get a lot of creasing in the toe area, or what's called the vamp. Instead, it just sort of rolls very smoothly in that space. I'll compare these very briefly against the Allen Edmonds version of the same shoe. So this is their version of the balmoral wingtip. This is their version of the burgundy shell Cordovan, and as you can see, I'll put it right next to the Alden version. It's much more red. Alden actually puts sort of an eggplant color dye on top of the shell Cordovan for their number 8 is what they call it, shell Cordovan color. And Allen Edmonds, at the time these were made, just kept the shell Cordovan without any treatment on top. I understand these days they are going more of a darker color like this because they also put a dye over the top. Allen Edmonds does have a double oak sole here as opposed to the single oak that Alden uses. And beyond that, they're just very similar shoes. I like both of them probably equally. They're just different. So anyway, there's my brief review. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. One final thing regarding sizing. So the Plaza Last, depending on how your foot is either going to run true to size, so in other words, whatever the size you're measured on the Brannock device, or it may be a little bit long and a little bit narrow, depending on your foot. So I am a size 12D on the Brannock device, almost a 12E, which means it's a little bit wider than standard width. For both of these pair of shoes, I went with an 11.5E because the Plaza Last runs a little bit long, and they fit me perfectly. And the way you can tell that is by where the creases are happening on these shoes. So contrasting that with Allen Edmonds number 5 Last, which is what they make these and the Park Avenues and the Fifth Avenues and a few other of their more formal shoes, they use the number 5 Last, or as they call it now, the 65 Last. I actually use a size 12D in that last. And those, again, but you can tell by the creasing, you can tell that that fits me well also. I'll do a separate review on these Allen Edmonds shoes, but I just wanted to reference those real quick in this video. So hopefully you found this interesting. If you have questions or comments, please let me know. Thank you much.